So today I want to address the one area of your retirement plan that is most at risk. And I have to warn you, it's not fun to think about, but it's your demise. It's planning for what happens if something happens to you. In fact, I am writing this episode while on a flight returning from my grandfather's funeral, which has me thinking about this. Here's a sobering statistic. In 2024, only 32% of Americans had a will, and that number is getting worse, not better, and significantly fewer have a trust. So today, I want to share 6 essential estate planning tips and lessons that could save your family from unnecessary heartache and financial stress. And pay close attention to number 5, because it's the most common mistake that I see, even in people who put together all of their estate planning documents. But first, my name is Kevin Lum. I'm a certified financial planner, and this channel is dedicated to helping 1 million people retire without worry. If you're watching this, you probably care about your family's future, or you are very bored. Maybe you're approaching retirement, or maybe you're already there, or maybe you're planning ahead because you've seen firsthand the chaos that can happen when a family member passes without proper planning. So what we're going to do is walk through 6 essential planning steps that every retiree needs to make. Actually, everyone needs to make based on what I've witnessed firsthand and also what we've learned as a firm from estate planning experts. Ultimately, estate planning isn't about money. Estate planning is about clarity and peace of mind. It's about making sure your family can focus on grieving and celebrating your life if something were to happen to you, instead of scrambling at the last minute to try to sort out your affairs. According to Trust and Will's 2025 estate planning report, families without proper estate planning spend an average of 16 months longer settling an estate than families that did. And the process costs them 3 to 5 times more in administrative and legal fees. 3 to 5 times more just because documents weren't put in place before someone died. So let's dive in. First, you need to create a will. And one of the things I see happen often is people say, well, I don't have enough assets to need a will. Or if I pass, everything will just go to my spouse. Without a will, your state's laws could decide what happens to your stuff. And trust me, the state doesn't know your family like you do. In fact, in some states, if you're married with children, it's possible that your spouse will only get 1/3 to half of your estate, and the kids will get the rest. Now, that might sound reasonable. But what if your spouse needs to stay in the house and the kids decide they want to sell their share? Or what happens if you have children from a previous marriage? Or what if there's a family member that you do not want getting anything? You need a will to make sure that your wishes are carried out after you pass. Your will should include who gets what. If you have kids, who cares for your minor children, who serves as the executor, and then provide specific instructions for sentimental items. So if you have a baseball card collection, who gets that baseball card collection? And you want to update that will after major life changes, marriages, divorce, births, death, moving, big purchases. If anything major happens in life, you just want to pause for a moment and say, does my current will still reflect my wishes? I met someone whose will still listed her ex-husband from 15 years ago, and she was very clear that was the last person in the world she wanted inheriting anything. So first of all, as a baseline, create a will. Second, consider establishing a living trust or a revocable living trust. And before you say, well, trusts are just for rich people, that is a very common misconception. So let me talk about a living trust or a revocable living trust just for a moment. A will and trusts aren't interchangeable. They can work well together, but a trust gives you control both when you're alive, when you're incapacitated, or when you pass. And here's the thing you want to remember. If you're going to underline anything, a trust helps you avoid probate, and probate can be slow, public, and expensive. Trusts also maintain privacy. When a will goes through probate, it becomes public record. Trusts don't. And a trust, like I said, can also help with incapacity planning. If you're unable to manage your finances, your successor trustee can step in and take over. Without a trust, your family might have to go to court to get that authority. But most importantly, trusts give you more control over your assets after you pass than a will. So just to recap, a trust helps you bypass probate, which that alone is worth doing a trust. but it also gives you more control over how your assets are distributed. I've tried to figure out a good way to explain a trust to clients. And if you're a trust attorney watching this, you're probably going to yell at the screen. But the best way I can think about it is it's like starting an LLC and you appoint a CEO, someone who's going to run that business if something were to happen to you, right? So this LLC is going to own all of your assets in the event that you become incapacitated or in the event that you pass. Then that person you've designated to run that business can sell your assets, can, begin to distribute money in the way you've asked for it to be distributed. And so it just gives you a lot of control and makes everything much easier for your family. So you might be wondering, does it make sense to have a trust? So let me give you a few questions to answer. First, do you own real estate? If the answer is yes, you probably want a trust. Second, do you have over $100,000 in assets? If the answer is yes, you probably want a trust. Do you have a life insurance policy with a significant payout and younger kids? If the answer is yes, you probably want a trust. Do you have a blended family? If the answer is yes, you probably want a trust. Do you own a business? Do you want privacy? Again, if you answered yes, you probably want a trust. Now, not everyone needs a trust, and it doesn't make sense in every state. Each state has its own laws, but by and large, my guess is that most people watching this video should at least consider setting up a revocable living trust. So first, make sure you have a will or a pour-over will. Second, consider a trust. Third, you want to set up a power of attorney. Now, technically, you need two powers of attorney, a financial and a medical, but I'm going to lump the medical power of attorney in with the next step. So let's just talk about for a moment the financial power of attorney. The financial power of attorney gives someone the right to manage your financial affairs if you are incapacitated, to pay your bills, to manage your investments, to deal with real estate, all of it. You want to be careful in who you choose for this role. Don't just choose someone you love, but choose someone who's responsible, available, and willing to serve. And most importantly, someone who's going to follow your wishes, and always name a backup. Have a primary and then have a backup. So have a financial power of attorney. Fourth, document your healthcare wishes. You need a medical power of attorney and a living will. The person you designate can talk with doctors, they can access medical records, and they can make treatment decisions. A living will is going to outline your preferences for life support, feeding tubes, resuscitation, and more. Don't just fill out a form, but have real conversations. Talk to your family about what you want and what you don't want, and make sure that you update these over time. Okay, number 5, and this is vitally important because this is where I see mistakes happen most often. Review your beneficiary designations. Review the designations on your 401k, your IRAs, your pensions, your insurance policies, your investment accounts. Make sure you update and review your beneficiary designations. Make sure you have a primary and make sure you have a contingent. Why? Because, and this is very important, maybe you should underline this as well, beneficiary designations override your will. Beneficiary designations override your will. If your 401k lists your ex-girlfriend, they get the money even if your will says otherwise, right? So if you had, you opened up your 401k account 30 years ago and you had a girlfriend and now you were married and it's 30 years later and you just forgot to update it, even if your will says that your spouse gets the money, whoever is the designated beneficiary on that account, they get the money. So here are some common mistakes: not updating the policies after divorce or marriage, not naming backups or the contingent beneficiary, naming minor kids without a trust. This is really important as well. Forgetting old accounts, using vague language like my kids or my children, right? All those are things you want to avoid. Use full names, use social security numbers, use clear percentages, and review on a regular basis. Number 6, if you love your family or you love your friends, organize your important documents. I have personal experience with this, and I know the chaos it creates when you have not organized your important documents. Create a master roadmap. Create like maybe a Word document or something that lists all the accounts and insurance policies and assets. Where are the documents? Where are the logins and the passwords? Where's the number for your financial advisor and for your insurance agent? And all those things that your family need just in case something happens to you. And if you have a physical copy of these documents, use a fireproof safe or a safety deposit box. Also, have a plan for digital assets. What happens to your email? What happens to your social media account? If you have crypto, crypto does not pass via beneficiary. So make sure you have a plan for your crypto if something were to happen. One of the best practices or something easy you can do is use a password manager and make sure someone knows how to access it. And also create a digital vault that has all the documents you need inside of that. Make sure it's incredibly secure. You have two-factor authentication on it, but also make sure that your family members or your friends know how to access that vault if something were to happen to you. So those are some of the proactive things you need to do. And here's the truth. Estate planning, it's emotional. None of us want to think about our demise, or most of us don't. And that's why we avoid it. But legal documents mean nothing if your family ends up fighting over them or if they don't know where to find them. So talk with your family, take some time, talk about your values. What matters to you? What legacy do you want to leave? What do you want to avoid? Like, do you want to avoid living incapacitated for years on end? Make sure your family knows this and be transparent about your plans. You don't have to release every detail, but clarity reduces conflict. And if you're leaving unequal inheritance amounts, explain why. Hold a family meeting when life changes. And remember, fairness does not always mean equal. So now that we know the proactive moves you should make and some conversations you should have, what are some of the common mistakes that I see? Mistake number one, procrastination. The longer you wait, the harder and the costlier it gets. Don't procrastinate. Mistake number two, doing it all yourself. If things are simple, online tools may work, but complex situations need professional help. Now, there are a lot of great online tools. In fact, our firm uses something called wealth.com, which really, I think, takes the best of lawyers with AI and merges them together and makes sure they're creating specific documents for each state. The problem is that each state has its own probate laws. So if you do something that's very not specific to a particular state, it may not be the right documents for your situation. So if you don't work with a professional like an attorney, make sure that the software you're using or the service you're using is creating specific documents for your specific state and situation. Mistake number three, and I see this more than almost any other mistake, your family cannot follow your wishes if they don't know what your wishes are. Communicate, and then communicate. Let your friends and your family know what your wishes are. Mistake number four, not updating your documents. Major life changes equals it's time to review. Review your documents every couple of years. Make sure they still indicate your wishes. One of the nice things about wealth.com, the service that we use, is anytime you have a major life change, new grandkid or anything that you want to update your documents, you just go in, you enter the new information, it automatically restates your estate documents, and then you just get them renotarized. So it makes it very easy. If you use an attorney, if you make changes, you want to go in and have the trust or those documents restated or updated. But make sure every so often you are reviewing those documents, making sure they still reflect your wishes. Mistake number five, not coordinating everything, right? I see this all the time with finances and with estate planning. Your will and your trust and everything need to be coordinated together. Make sure you don't have a bunch of disparate pieces that aren't all tied together. In the same way you need a cohesive financial plan, you need a cohesive estate plan. Okay, so if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're not sure what to do, here are a few next steps. First of all, review and update your beneficiary designations. 2, reach out to an estate attorney or find an online service that's reputable that you can begin creating these documents. And number 3, start a conversation with your family. Even if it's just a first step, start today. Your future self and your family will thank you. And if you're thinking about retirement, I have an entire playlist to help get you started.